Well, good evening and welcome to another exciting episode of Love Not Fear. Tonight we're going to be doing a Samhain special and talking just a wee bit about death. So I'm Jack Cox, author of Love Not Fear, and I'm with my lovely co-host Annie Day, who has written two excellent books.
Orgasmic Health and Your Guide to Feeling Fabulous Fast.
Brilliant, brilliant. So let's talk a little bit about Samhain. Most of you probably know this anyway. Samhain is the beginning of winter and was considered by the Celts to be when their new year began. It ushers in winter, a very real season of death for our ancestors, a time when many of the weak would perish. Indeed, the veil between the world of the living and the world of the dead seems very thin at this time of year.
Indeed.
So it's a time to show reverence to our ancestors by setting a place for them at the table. It's also a time to tell stories of their exploits and great deeds.
Yay!
Modern day Halloween is very much a misunderstanding and a perversion of that tradition. To the Celts, death and rebirth were just part of the endless cycle of life. But the invading Roman Christians were scared of death. Indeed, Pope Boniface IV even tried to ban Samhain in the 7th century.
That didn't work very well, did it?
Yet it lives on.
Woohoo!
During this time of year, hearth fires in family homes are left to burn out while the last of the harvest is being gathered in. Then, when the harvest work is complete, the festivities would begin with the lighting of the communal Samhain bonfires. Celebrants would join the Druid priests to light the community fires using a wheel, which were called fiction, and a spark, a flame. Participants took the flame to their from the bonfire to their homes to rekindle their own hearth fires. The wheel is considered a representation of the sun and also of the turning year, the wheel of the year, the turning seasons.
Yeah.
This is the time of the year when our ancestors would cull the sheep, cattle, pigs that could not be fed during the winter months. Only the very best were kept for breeding. The rest would be salted and smoked to preserve it over the winter. The animals would be driven between two bonfires as a cleansing and as a blessing. Like all Celtic fire festivals, Samhain begins at sundown and lasts for 3 days and 3 nights. So Samhain has only just begun an hour and a half ago. During this period, it is important not to let the fires go out. Letting one's own hearth fire go out is considered a bad omen for the season ahead. In Britain, the bonfire tradition has tended to move towards November the 5th now. But in Ireland, there were bonfires at Samhain everywhere until very, very recent years.
And they used to be on the top of hillsides or mountain tops, so they could be seen, you know, all over that area, basically, with that very bright fire.
This is the tradition of the beacon fires, isn't it?
Yeah.
The High King at Tara would light his fire.
Yeah.
And then everybody in line of sight of Tara would light theirs.
Yeah.
And then everybody in line of sight of theirs would light theirs.
Yeah.
And the whole, within half an hour, the whole country was lit up.
Yeah.
And it's also the tradition in this country. We have beacon fires too.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm sure the beacon fire at Glastonbury Tor has just been lit.
Yay!
We love Glastonbury Tor.
We so do. That's why I've got my crown on tonight. I'm reliving.
I've been invited.
Noticed.
I've been. Sorry.
I said you probably noticed that I have my fairy crown on still.
I thought that was your head.
No, it's slightly amended. It hasn't got as much. I had loads of ivy wrapped around it, but clearly it's died now. So that's gone in the big recycling garden waste bin.
I've been invited to Glastonbury for Yule, by the way.
Oh, wow. Do it.
Eat your heart out any day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the time of Samhain is one of the old cross-quarter festivals of the Wheel of the Year. It means summer's end, and it's the point of death, but it's also a point of rebirth.
Indeed.
Samhain has its dark aspect, yeah, for sure. It was a very difficult time for our ancestors, who just didn't have enough food to keep all the animals going through the winter, and they didn't have enough food to keep all the people very often as well. The elderly would often die during the cold winters.
Yeah.
But as we move into winter, but let's not forget that this is also a very beautiful time of abundance and joy.
Yeah.
Inviting us to share, to celebrate, to be joyful and grateful for all the blessings that we have.
Indeed. That's always good to do. Gratitude. We love gratitude, don't we?
Traditionally, this is the end of the Celtic year, and it's the time of thinking about everything that's happened over the past 12 months.
Yeah.
All of the experiences, all of the wisdom gained, and also that sense of what life is like now compared with a year ago.
Yeah.
What is in your heart that inspires you now? What wisdom have you gained? And what do we see with our loved ones and friends, and also in the collective? We're really being invited at this time to enter into the energies of Samhain,
Yeah.
which are all about feeling the inner wellspring of our hearts.
Oh, that sounds beautiful, Jack. Thank you.
I nicked it.
We're very good at nicking things, but then going, actually, I did nick it.
Samhain is also about following the cycle of the trees.
Yeah.
The trees are beginning to let go of their leaves, beginning to let go of what no longer serves them.
Yeah.
Can we do the same?
I think they're a very good example about letting go of things that are not meant for us. And then getting ready for new growth in the springtime.
They most certainly are. And let's remember that the Wheel of the Year turns.
Yeah.
And soon it'll be Beltane and we'll be starting all over again.
Yeah.
So let's take time for regeneration so we can be rebirthed anew in the spring at Beltane. Let's go within, into the inner stillness, and feel our hearts full of love.
Oh, lovely. That is beautiful.
We welcome the ancestors at this time.
Absolutely.
When the veil is thin and our ancestral loved ones walk amongst us.
Yeah.
This is the
giving us
time.
all their wisdom and their experience.
This is the time when we honor our ancestors. We're not scared of the dead.
No.
The whole Halloween BS is all about being scared of the dead.
Yeah.
Scared of what might come through from the other side now when the veil is thin, trying to scare it away. But that's not the Celtic tradition, and that's not our tradition.
No.
Our tradition is to welcome it.
Yeah.
Because we're not scared of it.
Yeah, indeed.
We integrate it. It's part of us. The ancestors are part of us.
Yeah, indeed. And also, death is a really important part of life.
Life
It's not something to be like avoided, but just to accept that death is part of life.
Death and rebirth. It's part of the cycle.
Indeed.
You can't have one without the other.
Indeedy.
And as I'm going to go into later on, death is only taking off this persona.
Yeah.
Taking off this, what I call later on, the virtual reality meat suit that we wear.
Yeah.
And getting back to our true essence.
Yeah.
There
will never be a time when we don't exist. There will never be a time when any of the inhabitants on our beautiful earth don't exist. We'll just be in a different form, maybe from the physical, as you say, the cosmic meat suit that we've got on at the moment.
Energy can never be created or destroyed.
No.
It just changes form.
Yeah.
And death is just us changing form.
Yeah.
They're moving up to a higher level.
Indeed. And I'm going to make such great worm food when I'm gone. I'm going to make the best kind of manure possible. And I'm going to have a tree planted on top of me, a beautiful yew tree. But I am going to make the most beautiful organic compost.
If this isn't inappropriate, Annie, I'm going to say I'm going to come and feed on your worms.
I'm going to be wonderful worm food. Wonderful. They're going to love it. They're going to love it.
The sun is moving into Scorpio at the moment. The sign of transformation and regeneration, of birth and rebirth.
Yippee.
As we move into this period of rest and stillness and of dreaming, as we move into our dreaming, we hear the call of our ancestors inviting us to search for our treasure.
Yay!
For our light within, as we journey inwards through the darkness and into the shadows, reflecting on all we have experienced during the last 12 months.
Oh yeah, we've learned such a lot in 12 months, haven't we?
We've both learned. We've all learned and grown a lot.
Yeah.
Samhain gives us the opportunity of bringing the wisdom of the lessons into the light so we can carry them forward into the following year. We offer love, gratitude, and thanks to those who have facilitated our hardest lessons and our greatest growth.
Indeed, can't have one without the other, can we?
I know you resonate with that, Annie.
Oh, absolutely. I'm still laughing at my insanity.
But you've learned and you've grown. So
absolutely.
Thanks for it all, you know?
Yeah, and I'm always really grateful for the most painful, heartbreaking, gut-wrenching lessons, because that's what teaches me to grow and develop myself. So it's all good. You
know what I say, Annie, don't you?
Go on.
Before we're born, when we're planning this incarnation,
yes.
Who would we ask to teach us the hardest lessons?
The ones we love.
The ones we love the deepest.
Absolutely.
Our closest spirit friends.
Yeah.
They're not our enemies.
No.
They're our closest, dearest friends.
And they are honouring our soul contracts.
Yeah.
I really believe that the most painful lessons, the other person was honouring our soul contract, and I was honouring our soul contract as well by doing exactly what I did. And once you have an understanding of that, then you know it's all in divine and perfect order.
That's why I give them so much thanks and gratitude for what they've done for me.
Yeah, and me too.
I don't hate them or begrudge them or anything.
No,
I'm grateful
what we're
to
about.
them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wasn't the person I wasn't the man I am now a year ago.
Yeah.
And I've got specific people I can thank for that.
Yeah.
You know?
And I would be saying the same, except clearly I'm not a boy, I'm a girl.
Well, we have
There's
noticed
some
that.
outstanding features of me that may make it apparent that I'm actually female.
We had actually noticed that, Annie.
I think you're telling porkies.
And at this time, let's offer our love to the animal and plant kingdoms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next week, we have a full moon eclipse in Taurus, which will give us the opportunity to embrace our wholeness, the light and the dark.
Yes.
Maybe listen to the guidance from our inner realms and shine our hearts brightly as we move into the Celtic New Year.
Yay.
It seems so important at this time, perhaps more this year than ever before, for us to join together in this way.
Yeah.
To come together and form groups.
Oh, connections, everything, isn't it, where we are right now? It's absolutely vital and essential.
It's also time for us to really tune in with the natural world.
Yeah.
And with the ancient wisdom of the earth.
Yeah.
This wisdom, when we incorporate it and integrate it into our lives, can be a powerful guiding force.
Indeed.
It brings balance.
Yeah.
It brings harmony.
Yeah.
And it assists us in living up to our highest ideals.
Yeah. So that we're always the best version of ourselves.
When we gather together in this way, when we connect to the energies of Gaia and into the energies of the turning great wheel of the year, we empower ourselves and we empower each other.
Yeah. And
we empower the whole community to live.
Yeah, we're role models for the light, basically, aren't we? I think our presence inspires other people to do even better than they're doing already.
Yeah, let's inspire all of us.
Yes.
To live in a way that is in alignment with our highest evolution and our destiny on this planet as we move into fifth dimensional consciousness.
Yay.
Yesterday, we put the clocks back. We're entering the deepest, darkest time of year. This is the time when the leaves are starting to fall from the trees.
Yep.
And the autumn winds are blowing the fruit off the trees.
Yep.
And this root energy moves down into the earth, breaking up the rocks. Our ancestors are our roots.
Indeed.
They also would have tuned into their roots, their ancestors, at this time of year. This is a very, very old tradition. Now our harvests are safely gathered, we can shift our attention away from the outward, from the doing, into a more reflective time, a time of dreaming and planning. Through awareness, we can break old patterns that no longer serve us, and we can create new patterns. And one of the patterns we may wish to change involves our attitude to death. Now, I think you've got some things to share with us, Annie. Actually, before we bring Annie in, I've got a very, very special treat for us. Andrew, your poem, please, sir.
So this is something that I wrote exactly a year ago today. It's called Surrender to the Silence. Laying here, contemplating meanings, hopes, dreams, thinking of existence, life, death, and the beyond. A moment will come when your body will surrender to the silence. I am thinking of that choiceless time. So I accept in grace. I surrender to the silence now. Mind stilled, I embrace the silence, loving what is, finding my place in eternity. I am but nothing, and yet, at the same time, I am everything. As I surrender to the silence, my presence fills the universe. I am one with it all.
Wow, that's so beautiful, Andrew. Thank you so much for sharing this, because it won't just be the people that hear us live, but it will be the people on YouTube later. So thank you from all of us.
Yeah. Blown away by that, Andrew. Thank you. Yeah. And I've got another contribution from somebody who's sent me a voice clip. We used to do this show, I think before you joined us, Annie, we used to do this show as a phone-in.
Oh, right.
So a very dear, close shaman friend of mine in France, Brigitte Anton, known as Mabi, who's been on the show a few times, has sent in a very interesting contribution.
Right now, because this celebration has been misused at such unprecedented levels, with so much suffering. And yes, I guess having some strong Scorpio energies in my birth chart, it does ask a lot more of me this kind of time. And it's before my birthday as well. Although it's not yet, but it's a time of transition for my parents, and yes, times of huge changes. So holding this transition, as you call it, the Samhain, for the next 3 days at a very different level from what it was programmed to be, with destruction and misuse of the darkness to go into satanic rituals. When before it used to be for going within and blessings, offering blessings for the end of the seasons. And for me as a shaman, I guess it has to do with when someone passes, it's hard to honor not only the being, because that being is forever alive on a soul, spiritual, and as my lovely teacher when I took my healing diplomas a long time ago, Ruth White, who was channeling, she was doing channeling, and she mentioned that the passing, it's like a pearl that just goes and joins a necklace with the other pearls and transmit the information. So everything gets connected, and of course it's many necklaces if we think that each bead of that pearl necklace is going to touch other necklaces and share the information from this one incarnation. But my feeling is there are many incarnations I have experienced, and many death, rebirth within this one incarnation. And many of my incarnations within these incarnations, I don't have any memory. It's like they're gone, they're past, they're finished. It's like finishing something and moving on to another experience, another expansion with new keys. So in that sense, for me, death is more the passing of a loved one. Often it can be a being, it can be a cat, it can be when we feed and when we eat every day. It's like being thankful for what we've just eaten or transformed. I've just been making some beautiful queen's jelly and queen's paste for Christmas. It's offered as little sweets, and my feeling that too has had a transformation, and yet it carries all the energies of the sun, of the rain, of the wind, of the earth, and the love I put in making it. However, it's no longer in its beautiful form as that fruit. It now is in the most beautiful jar, and it looks like golden honey, but it is queen's jelly. So every day for me there is an homage, an honoring. And when a loved one passes, a human loved one with a heart bonds, it's a little bit more painful, because often we have not been saying what was in our hearts, or we did not take the time, or maybe there was too much trauma in that relationship, too many loose ends that didn't get resolved. So that's where the pain comes in. So that's my take around this time of the year, which for me is not just this time of the year, because it's an ongoing process. So just wanted to share that with you before your call. And as a shaman, everything for me is a passing and a rebirth, and a passing and a rebirth. So it's an ongoing, flowing process. And we are eternal beings of light. So 1,000 blessings, Jack.
Well, thank you so much, Mabi, for sharing your deep wisdom with us once again. You know, you're always very, very welcome on this show. 1,000 blessings to you. Annie.
Right. So, I looked at what death ceremonies there are throughout the world, basically. So death is the same across all cultures. We all live and we all die, except for what we've just said, which is we don't really ever die. We just are in a different format. The cycle of life is the same, but how we view death is quite different. We're all familiar with the traditional British funeral. Families, friends, relatives gather quietly around the body to wait, wearing black. Later, there is a church, synagogue, or temple ceremony with a priest or rabbi praying. What about other ways of grieving, from chopping the deceased into pieces on a mountaintop, as in Nepal? Now, I really like that. I know it sounds grotesque, and I know it's not how we do things, but I've got friends that live in Nepal, and they've said that they really believe this is the circle of life. So everybody gets a stick and bashes the body because they know that their spirit's not in there.
Yeah.
And then they leave the body for eagles and wolves and whatever else to feast on, because again, it is the circle of life.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely very beautiful, because you're doing two things, aren't you? You're recycling the body, but you're also acknowledging the fact that you know that that person is no longer in that body.
Yeah. So it's a really beautiful way of doing it. I know it's not culturally what we do, but I thought that was really lovely. And then in Africa, there are some parts of Africa where they dance with the corpses and where they sing lullabies to them as well. Still, some shared beliefs span the continent. In Africa, the deceased continue living after death. Most Africans believe in ancestors, which we've just talked about.
Yeah.
The deceased continue living after death, and the death will continue living and guiding their family in the afterlife. Without a proper funeral and burial, the ancestors, they believe, would become a wandering ghost. African funerals, as most of us know, are colourful, lively, elaborate affairs with lots of lovely music. In Nigeria, the Igbo tribe celebrates death with not one but two burials. The second burial is a celebration of the deceased, and I really like that idea.
Yeah.
I know some of the funerals that, well, I'm just going to say that I've enjoyed the most were a real celebration of that person, their sense of humour, the songs they love, their gifts to us, basically, rather than the sombre affairs that they can be, basically.
I've always said that if anybody comes to my funeral, I'm not expecting anybody to, I don't want any tears.
No, I've already decided, I've written it in my will, that when I die, I want everybody to turn up in shimmy belts, and I want everybody to be singing and dancing and telling all the funny stories about the amazing Annie Day was doing. I want it to be a real celebration of my life. So I've already told my family that's what we're doing. And then, of course, I'm going to make beautiful worm food.
I want people to acknowledge that I've graduated.
Yeah.
That I'm no longer stuck in this meat suit.
Yeah.
That I've gone home.
Yeah.
And I may be back one day if I don't think I will, but maybe I will. I may come back. I may come back one day.
Of course you will.
I don't particularly want to, but I'm sure I will.
No. But equally, if we believe in life after death, or we believe they're in the astral plane or whatever, that they're still connected to us, then it doesn't have to be that, final thing, does it?
It's not a final thing.
No,
all.
I know it's not.
I still get regular visits from my dad.
Yeah, me too. My papa jumps into Rachel's therapy sessions quite frequently. We'll suddenly go, oh my God, it's really cold. And then she'll go, oh, your dad's just coming. Oh, my grandma. Oh, and such a matter. Clearly, they're still helping us, aren't they?
I haven't seen my grandma for a few years. She used to come in quite a lot.
Did she?
She hasn't been lately. Maybe she's reincarnated.
Yeah, maybe, darling. So the San people of Southern Africa are the oldest living humans on the earth. In a mysterious rain dance, they transport their souls to the spirit world to speak with the deceased. Worshipping our ancestors is essential to African culture, and as it is in most cultures, to be honest.
Yeah.
Death customs in Asia. Asia makes up 30% of the earth and 60% of the population. Asian views on death root back to Hindu, Islamic, Confucianist and Buddhist religions. China covers most of Northeast Asia. Chinese funerals are rich in superstition and rituals, which include removing any mirrors and hanging cloths on the doorway of their homes, because they believe that not following the proper rituals means death and misfortune for the grieving family. To the southwest of China is Tibet, a remote Buddhist territory. Tibetan sky burials leave the deceased body on a platform for the vultures to eat. Very similar to Nepal, isn't it?
Yeah.
That again, it's that circle of life, and admitting and honouring the fact that this is not, they're not just the meat suits, that they are, you know, their spirit has gone somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Korean funerals centre around devotion to parents and Confucian tradition. In Korea, families keep cremation beads in their homes as a unique way to honour the deceased. Central America, the colourful cultures of countries like Costa Rica, Panama, and Guatemala show the importance of families in life and death. Immediate and extended family members provide comfort and aid in grief. Latinos don't shy away from the discussion of death. I think that quite often in the UK, we don't talk about sex, we don't talk about death, we don't talk about lots of things that we've been told are taboo, but the Latino culture is quite different to that.
Well, the Spanish and the Latinos, they still have this Day of the Dead.
Yeah. And I've been to a Spanish funeral and everybody wore white, and I really loved that, Jack.
Yeah,
yeah. And I've seen a funeral on one of the Greek islands as well, and again everybody wore white, and they got tambourines and flutes, and they were singing and dancing, and it was really a beautiful ceremony to express the amazing person that had passed over. South America, most South Americans are Catholics, but remote areas in the Andes Mountains and Peruvian Amazon have their own spiritual beliefs that influence death culture. So some of their rituals and beliefs in South America are, for instance, in Colombian African communities, women sing lullabies all night to the deceased. And again, I thought that was really lovely.
Oh, that's gorgeous, yeah.
Beautiful songs to their loved ones and sending them on their way for this big sleep. And I just thought that was such a beautiful thing to do, because I know that singing lullabies to my babies was comforting for me as well as for my babies. And I'm sure that, you know, singing lullabies to the dead will be having also an effect on everybody who's hearing them, but also our loved ones as well would be hearing those beautiful lullabies. So I thought that was lovely.
Well, just think how much easier it must be to transition.
Yeah.
If you're surrounded by love and lullabies and good vibes, instead of crying and the gnashing of teeth and all this nonsense that we have in our culture.
Yeah, I just thought that was really lovely to be sung. That lullaby to be sung to you as you pass over was just a really sweet thing to do. The majority of people living in the Middle East believe in the religion of Islam. Muslim funerals are usually simple and focus on the deceased actions in the earthly realm. So all the things that their families were really proud of and their accomplishments and their, you know, their characteristics. So, you know, their insane sense of humor or their ability to do a particular thing, basically.
I will say that we do that in this country, don't we? We always, it's normally the children of the deceased that get up and have say something about the lives of the of the deceased. I've done it twice for my mum.
Same. And I just, you know, did all the really funny things that my dad did that really raised our vibration. And in our darkest times, my dad would come up with some sort of quip or some lovely saying that was very true, but it was very funny as well. So it was, you know, it's celebrating all those gifts that our loved ones once brought to us.
I'll tell you a little personal detail here. When my Uncle Ronnie died, I was 16.
Yeah.
And I wasn't grief-stricken. I mean, I loved him dearly, but I wasn't grief-stricken.
Yeah.
I'd come from a place where we celebrate death properly.
Yeah.
And I came to this planet and everything was different and I couldn't get used to it. And I still haven't got used to it. and I probably never will.
Absolutely.
And I didn't feel any grief, but I remember everybody else around me was feeling grief.
Yeah.
And I thought, there's something wrong with me, you know. And I learned the grief at death is a learned response.
Oh, absolutely, darling.
It's
Absolutely.
not natural. And I learned it at 16.
Yeah. I've got a similar experience. So my maternal grandfather, who I just adored, we were both blue-eyed. We're the only people in our family, apart from my dad, that got blue eyes. So he was the blue-eyed boy, I was the blue-eyed girl. And when he died, I remember people saying to me how hard I was because I arranged all the cards, I put out all the booklets in church. And I think because my grandparents had explained about reincarnation when I was about 4, I suppose, that I didn't feel any sadness at all, even though I'm an ultra-sensitive empath and can usually pick up on everybody else's emotions. But I remember people saying, oh, she's really hard, isn't she? Not doing that. And I remember saying, but he's not in that box. He's not in that box.
Not in that box, no.
My granddad's not in that box. So I don't need to be sad because I know he's doing what he needs to be doing and he's not in pain anymore and all this stuff. But I do remember, like you, Jack, that I felt very odd when everybody else was crying and everybody else was grieving so loudly, and I didn't feel like that at all. And you know, long may that continue.
Does anybody else here want to just unmute briefly and share any personal experiences?
Come on, Andrew.
Well, just thinking about I was brought up Methodist, but in the Church of England, I know that they have all Saints and All Souls. There's All Hallows Eve, the 31st of October, All Saints Day, which is November the 1st, and then they have All Souls Day, which is November the 2nd. And that just mirrored what Jack was saying about 3 days of Samhain. Which I never realised that. Anyway, that's something new.
They nicked all their stuff from us. Come on.
Well, I'm sure they did. And then, of course, 2nd of November it's my birthday. So
happy birthday to you.
Thank you very, very much. And what we used to do for my birthday, we used to have a bonfire on the 5th. Yeah. And everybody would bring their own fireworks. So we had a massive display of fireworks. And Mum used to
as long as they didn't put you on it, Andrew.
Well, my Uncle Ernie, my grandma's brother, sat on top. And he got his flat cap on and he got his ordinary coat and he looked like the guy. And then just when they lit it, he jumped off. And it made everybody jumped. But yeah, Mum used to make parking pigs and ginger cake and lots of stuff. So you're talking about, you know, lighting the beacons all over. There always was. Well, until they tarmacked our street. Which was a cobbled street where I grew up. Until they tarmacked it, we had a fire, and you could see on the cobblestones. You could see the patch where the fire had been for a number of years. So there were different black marks. But of course, once they tarmacked it, we couldn't do that anymore.
You can't see the black bits on it.
So it's like, a lot of the things that were happening for me personally around my birthday are now making a lot more sense to me. We used to joke that the Guy Fawkes was the only guy to get into the Houses of Parliament
legitimately
with the right idea, blow it up. But the bonfire was to remember the gunpowder plot.
I think we've lost Andrew.
Or so we were told. But that's also when it comes thankful for the instructions that we've received through the last year. You two guys, you've got to come to the top of my list, because most, as I've said numerous times, lots of different things that you've talked about here on a Monday evening have been things that I've known of, but I didn't know any real detail. So I want to thank you both Jack and
you,
Annie,
Andrew.
for bringing enlightenment to me in this past year.
That's heartwarming to hear, Andrew. Thank you.
All right.
I'd just like to add a little bit. From a young kid, obviously in Ireland, we have a wake, and I think it's just an amazing celebration of life. I remember even as a very young child, obviously the houses would be full with the dead body as well, and we were just, as kids, would just be running around and playing and singing songs, and there was loads of food, and it was always such an amazing celebration of life. And it's just something that, again, death was never perceived as being scary. It was always perceived as something quite wonderful, really. And particularly my nan would go, "Oh, I can't wait to die," and we used to laugh about it, because she was like, "Oh, well, I'm going to a better place and I'm going to pass over." And it was always, we never feared it. It was always something to be, it's again, and the next step on the journey, something to look forward to.
Oh, that's lovely, Rachel. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful story.
So, Muslim people have to follow Islamic laws based on the Islamic holy books, the Quran. Finally, death isn't an easy process either. For Muslims, it tends to be bitter and painful, and people all over the Middle East have been known to slap their own faces, really wail, and it's not the way that we celebrate death, but that is what they feel is appropriate. So the loss of a loved one comes with emotions that may feel to us impossible to put into words. However, we've already talked about all the joyfulness of passing over, haven't we? And so there are said to be, there are said to be 5 stages to grief. So in 1969, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross released a book on death and dying, containing what is now called the Kubler-Ross model. And with it, she says that there are 5 stages to grief. So these are the 5 stages that she says. But what I want to explain is, as a grief recovery practitioner, I don't believe that we do them necessarily in a linear fashion. I think sometimes we'll be jipping about from one part of grief to the other, basically. So the 5 stages of grief, denial isn't just refusing the loss that has happened. It can also feel overwhelming, like the world has become meaningless. Feelings of shock and numbness occurs. Our bodies and mind only let enough emotion in as we can handle. As this shock fades away, feelings that have been suppressed will begin to surface. So the next stage is anger. So I want to talk briefly. We've talked about the emotional scale previously, haven't we, Jack?
We have, yeah.
So, sorry, my ginger's gone down the wrong way. We won't go any further with that.
What is that a euphemism for?
Well, I put ginger root in my tea and I might have just swallowed it while I was trying to breathe at the same time. You don't really want me to die on the radio.
No, we'll believe you.
So anger, as we begin to feel emotions again after loss, anger may rise above the rest Anger after a loss may have no actual direction and can target a variety of areas in our life, including friends, family, and our loved one that we've lost, even just the world in general. So on the emotional scale, so the lovely Esther Hicks put together this emotional scale. So right at the top is love, passion, self-actualization, joy, happiness. Right at the very bottom is grief, sadness, depression. Halfway up that emotional scale is anger. So actually, when people are reporting to me that they're really angry and they're beating themselves up about it, I've reframed it for them by saying, you know, you're not doing badly, you're doing really well, because halfway up that emotional scale is anger. So if you've got to the angry stage, then you're on the way up, not the way down. Also, from a Chinese medicine perspective, we believe that the lungs are all about loss and grief issues. So the lung meridian starts underneath our feet, goes all the way up to our beautiful, beautiful lungs here. But when it gets to the right-hand side, it then meets the liver meridian. The liver meridian is all about fear, disappointment, irritation, and anger. So not only are we dealing with the loss of something and our meridians for our lungs dealing with it, but also when it joins the liver, it makes it more expressive, shall we say, which is not a bad thing necessarily. Bargaining. After a loss, it's only natural to want life to go back to the way it was before. Statements like, if only we could go back in time, what if this never happened, becomes a way to try not to feel the pain of the loss. Yeah. And by remaining in the past, we can avoid some of the hurt temporarily. So I'm going to say that this is a coping mechanism, and I'm good with all coping mechanisms. Depression, whilst bargaining, focusing on the past, depression is all about the present. Grief may feel deeper than it was before. With the permanence of death, it may feel like the depressive thought will last forever. And while typically in life, depression is seen as something to be fixed after a loss, it's an integral part of our healing. And I would totally agree with that. Acceptance. This shouldn't be confused with one being okay with the loss, but rather it's acknowledging the fact that a loved one is now physically gone. And with that comes a new painful reality. We may never like this new reality, but it is the one we accept and learn to live with. Acceptance doesn't necessarily mean moving on, nor is it the end point of the grieving process. It can be making new connections and relationships, listening to our own needs, or just simply allowing ourselves to live again, but only doing so after we have grieved. Whether it's you or your loved one dealing with a terminal illness or grieving the loss of someone close, these stages can be thought as a valuable model that shows grief is not just sadness, but a multitude of feelings, emotions, and experiences that will be unique for each person. It is a tool to help us find greater acceptance as we progress through our grieving journey. And as I said at the beginning, as a grief recovery practitioner, I really don't believe that it's always linear. Sometimes we'll do depression and then we'll go back up to anger and then we'll do acceptance. So, you know, although I like this, the stages of grief, I'm not sure it's quite as linear as she suggests it is. So what I wanted to talk about as well is we're thinking at this time of Samhain about death, but actually there are lots of other forms of bereavement. So bereavement can be death, divorce, ending of a friendship or relationship, loss of work, status, redundancy, declines in our health, losing capacity, and major changes are often associated with loss and grief issues. And because this has come up so frequently over the last few weeks from my patients, I'm going to say as well, going back to the wonderful Masarai motto, that being ignored is a huge loss and grief issue. So
yes, absolutely.
It really affects us
It does, yeah.
so dreadfully. So Masarai Moto had a glass of water that he told was loved and beautiful and accepted, and he told it all the time. And then it produced the most beautiful, spectacular snowflakes. And the glass of water that was ignored, when he put that under the microscope, was very deformed and closed in. Now, you think that that was one, you know, was just a glass of water. Bearing in mind that we're made of 80% water, what will that do to us when we're ignored? You know, and what will it do to us when we're told that we're beautiful and gorgeous and accepted and loved exactly as we are? So I just wanted to say some of that basically, because sometimes we get so focused on bereavement just being death, when actually there's so many other things that it might be that are causing that. So carry on. Okay, so there is a lot of overlap with what you've been speaking about, Samhain. Bonfires and communion with the dead is the theme globally. In Wiccan and Pagan traditions, celebrations included music and dance celebration called witches' balls in proximity to Samhain. So on Sunday night, I went to a lovely, lovely thing where we just thanked the universe for all the blessings we've had this year and for all the things that have made us grow. Oh, I was going to say forced, but it wasn't forced really, but we've chosen to grow because of these experiences. Celts believe that on the night before the new year, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred, which is what you've already said. On the night of October the 31st, they celebrated Samhain, when it was believed that the ghosts of the dead returned to the earth. As millions of children and adults participate in the fun Halloween on the night of October the 31st, few will be aware of its ancient Celtic roots unless they've just listened to Jack. In Celtic Ireland, about 2,000 years ago, Samhain was the division of the year between the lighter half of summer and the darker half winter. At Samhain, the division between this world and the other world was at its thinnest. So the veil between the physical and the spiritual realms was much thinner. The family's ancestors were honoured and invited home, whilst harmful spirits were warded off. People wore costumes and masks to disguise themselves in case harmful spirits would cause them harm. Bonfires and food played a large part in all these festivities, and sometimes the bones of slaughtered livestock were cast into a communal fire. Household fires were extinguished and started again after the bonfire. The food was prepared for the living and the dead. Food for the ancestors who were in no position to eat. It was ritually shared with the less well off.
Yeah, I mean, the tradition very much that I was initiated into is that, yes, you share the libations with the ancestors. Yeah. Obviously, the ancestors aren't going to take those.
Yeah.
But they're put out in the garden.
Yeah.
And the creatures of the garden will come and take them.
Yeah.
Which is the spirit of the earth anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not just at Samhain, but at all the
time.
at all the rituals. the libations were put out for the for the fairy folk.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in practical terms, we understood that it would be the small animals that would take them
Yeah.
as representatives of the she.
Yeah, so my little hedgehog and my squirrels and my birds are having a lovely little feast. So the two hills in the Boyne Valley were associated with Samhain. Now, Rachel's probably going to kill me for slaughtering this word. So it's Tlachthga. So I don't know if that Tlaga and Tara.
Do you want to unmute yourself, Rachel?
Tell me how to pronounce it, Rach.
I'm not sure I'm going to be of any advantage to you this evening. Let's go with your pronunciation. I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you, soul sister. So Tlach was the location of a great fire festival which began on the eve of Samhain. Tara was also associated with Samhain. However, it was secondary to Tlaga, or whatever it might say. The entrance passage to the Mound of the Hostages on the hill of Tara is aligned with the rising sun around Samhain. The Mound of the Hostages is 4,500 to 5,000 years old, suggesting that Samhain was celebrated long before the first Celts arrived in Ireland about 2,500 years ago.
Well, that's interesting. So it's pre-Celtic.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And what else have I got? No, everything else. I think I've just got duplications of what you've said, Sugar Plum.
Okay, so I'll just give us the next bit of my stuff.
Go on then.
Then we can wind up.
I'm your cheerleader. These are invisible pom-poms.
Right, so let's have a think about death, life and death, and why we're here, and what it's all about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who remembers the Matrix movie?
Me?
It came out in 1999. Annie does. I expect we all do. Yeah, everyone knows that movie.
And Matrix 2 was even more. Well, all the messages that were in the background, there was loads and lovely stuff going on.
Yeah, of course, we all knew it was fiction, it was sci-fi, and not to be taken too literally, but there were important messages in that film.
Oh, absolutely.
The Matrix and its sequels were brilliant movies.
Yeah.
And I've great respect for the people who made them. But in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, and I'm not trying to enforce my opinion on anybody else, they missed one very important point. As far as I'm concerned, yes, we are living in a matrix.
Yep, without doubt.
In fact, I think we're living in two matrices.
Okay, interesting.
A matrix within a matrix.
Absolutely.
And I have spoken of this before.
With Mr. Ike.
Now, I'm not going to start talking about good and evil, because, as I've said many times, it's all a matter of perspective.
Indeed.
What the wildebeest calls the end of the world is, for a pride of lions, food for the cubs.
Absolutely.
It's all a matter of perspective.
Yeah, and I learned a long time ago from my crystal therapy teachers that there is no such thing as evil energy.
Yeah,
there's just energy that is in the wrong place at the wrong time. So it's not evil, it's just energy that's in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I'm much more comfortable with that.
From your perspective.
Indeed.
It's still a matter of perspective.
It is indeed.
But we can talk about what is resourceful for us.
Yes, and
what is not resourceful for us. The first matrix, or computer simulation, if you like. Ike calls it a computer simulation.
Indeed.
So let's just think about that. Why do we have computer simulations? Why do we have virtual reality? why do we have flight simulators? Okay, they're fun, but we also have these things because they are safe environments in which we can practice. We humans are, as we've already said, immortal souls.
Yay!
Who have entered a flight simulator.
Oh, I like that, Jack.
For a brief period, so we can practice.
Oh, I've been doing a lot of practicing, Jack.
Yeah, we are. So I've heard any day. So
I'm sure I'm an ancient soul. I've been round this route a few times now.
I believe the Earth, indeed the whole physical universe, is a flight simulator. Okay, it's just an analogy. Okay, don't go out singing. Jack said it's literally a flight simulator. It's
no, we're just exploring. We're just investigating, exploring ideas, aren't we, on this show?
We come here to practice and hone our skills.
Yes.
Nothing that happens here is real. This is why I keep saying there's no good or bad and there are no tragedies. As Annie and I were talking about earlier, we're grateful to the people that have taught us our hardest lessons.
Oh, without doubt, darling.
We don't go out thinking that we're victims.
No. Survivors of scrumminess and soul contracts that we needed.
We come here to the safe environment to practice and to play. It's a safe environment because whatever we do here, whatever happens to us, whatever we suffer, whatever limbs we lose, even if we die, nothing affects our immortal souls, except insomuch as we have learnt from the experience or failed to learn. When we are born into a physical body, a meat suit, a virtual reality suit, as we mentioned before, we have no direct contact with our environment, except via the 5 senses built into the suit. Which
don't really give us a true picture of what's going on. That's only a very small percentage, as we've said in the past.
Not a lot any day, not a lot. The sensors in the meat suit communicate with the onboard computer situated at the top of the suit in the head. Do you believe the evidence of your 5 senses and nothing more?
Oh gosh, no.
The human eye can see only visible light, but light comes in many other colors: radio, infrared, ultraviolet, X-ray, gamma rays, that are invisible to our naked eyes.
Radio waves.
I said that.
All we need is radio gaga.
I mean, this room now and the rooms that you're sitting in are full of information that we can't access.
Yeah.
Radio waves, television signals, even if we don't have a telly, the signals are coming through the room. We can't access them, but they're there. Visible light falls in the range of the electromagnetic spectrum betwixt about 400 trillion hertz to 800 trillion hertz.
Wow.
That's a very narrow band, really. People with normal hearing can hear sounds between 20 and 20,000 hertz. Touch. Touch is nothing more than an electromagnetic repulsion between the atoms, between the atoms of your flesh and the atoms of the thing that you think you're touching. Nothing ever really touches. And all these signals are fed into the brain, which creates an idea of what reality is out there. But we've no way of knowing how accurate that idea is. And we're certainly not getting the full picture.
No, no way.
The whole out there could just be an illusion for all we know,
Yeah.
a fantasy created by the brain. We'd never know the difference. Indeed, even if we were plugged into a life experience simulator, we'd never know. No, not suggesting that we are, but if we were, we'd never know. I actually wrote a short story about that, oh, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago.
And Red Dwarf, any of you remember Red Dwarf? I used to love Red Dwarf. There was a whole set of episodes, and it was called Better Than Life, and it was said to be a simulation of life, basically, and they had to get out of life, of this simulation, basically. I loved it.
That sounds brilliant, yeah. So anyway, now ask yourself, how confident are you really, about your perception of reality? How confident are you?
Oh no, mine's always a little bit wonky and a little bit woo-woo and fairy-fied, isn't it?
Basically, we're all flying blind. I used to love what I think it was Douglas Adams that used to say, reality's on the blink again. No, it wasn't Douglas Adams. It was Terry Pratchett.
Oh, another genius.
Reality's on the blink again. Right, one day soon, we'll all return back to spirit.
Yeah.
And nothing that happened here will make a jot of difference, except for what we've learned or what we've failed to learn.
Yeah.
So let's not take it all so seriously.
Do you remember who your co-host is before we go any further with being serious?
Right, say that again, Annie.
I said, have you not remembered who your co-host is when you say, should we not take it too seriously?
Why do you think I chose you, Annie Day?
Well, I'm very pleased that my beautiful sense of humour was one of the reasons you chose me.
You stopped me taking it all so seriously. The physical universe is just a training simulator for immortal souls. But within that simulator, there is another matrix going on. And this one is not necessarily resourceful to us. We want somebody to do some heavy music now, don't we?
That's
the one. This is the matrix I talk about in my book, Love Not Fear.
Yeah.
I call this matrix the game we did not devise. We live in a fake world within a fake world, where our perceptions are being manipulated deliberately and have been for hundreds of thousands of, well, tens of thousands of years.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have been systematically lied to in order to get us to play a game which is not resourceful for the majority of people on this planet.
And it dumbs us down and tells us that we're not magnificent star-seeded beings.
But which is highly resourceful for the globalist elite who have been controlling us since Babylon and probably before that. They control everything we do, say, and think through fear. And the biggest fear of all is the fear of poverty. We could be living in paradise, folks.
We are.
We could live in abundance if we only helped one another to thrive. But instead, we've been conned into playing this sick game based on money, fear, and greed. We have to compete and screw each other over. We've been fed fear-based beliefs. We have been fed fear-based beliefs which are not resourceful for us. As we said, beliefs are neither true or false. Okay, so people say that rocks are hard. Yeah, okay, but we're not talking about those sort of beliefs. We're talking about spiritual beliefs and cultural beliefs. Beliefs are neither right nor wrong. Our minds work in such a way that if there's a discrepancy between truth and our perception of truth, we will live our lives in such a way as to make what we believe seem to be true, or even to come true for us. As an example, take someone who's been unlucky in love. Because they believe they're unlucky in love or are unlovable, they pick the wrong partners, knowing on some subconscious level that they're going to be the wrong partners. And you and I have both done that a few times any day.
Jack Cox, I'm shocked that you are sharing this.
Or they do something within the relationship to drive the other person away.
Yeah,
Or to make them
and
stop.
that's part of the soul contract as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Or to make them stop loving you.
Indeed.
Yeah, I've done that a few times. Okay, hand up. I've done that a few times. Now, take that to a bigger level. Take it to a societal level. If we humans believe some things that aren't true about the world, then we're going to act in such a way as to make those things come true for us. One of those things is our dependence on money.
Yeah.
We think that we need to compete with one another, that we need a free market economy based on money. In my book, I blow that theory out of the water. It would be much more resourceful for us to help one another to thrive, to help the Joneses keep up with us, as I keep saying. I'm still talking about a free market economy, but one that is based on love and generosity instead of meanness and
Come
fear.
in, darling.
Still talking about a free market economy, but
Yeah.
one that's not based on money, but one that's based on love and generosity instead of meanness and fear. The economy I propose is based on competing to be the kindest, most generous person, rather than competing to be the meanest. If we did that, we could all be living in paradise, driving big cars and living in big houses. If that's
Oh, no, that wouldn't be paradise.
If that's what we want, or living in little cottages in the woods, which is what I want.
Sounds more like it.
And we could be living that way if we hadn't been lied to for the last 4,000 years or longer. So that's two matrices. We come here to play a game in this 3D or 5D reality. But when we get here, we find out that the tables have been rigged. We're coming to do this to practice. I think the thing that we've come here to practice is different for each one of us. But I think the main thing that we've come here to practice is love, unconditional love.
That's from Rachel Craven to everyone. Thank you so much for your great show. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go now.
Okay, we'll see you another time, Rachel. Thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate having you here. So being able to love one another, regardless of outside circumstances and conditions. I've seen so many memes on Facebook recently about love, talking about relationships, you know, that if you're not getting back as much as you're putting in, you should walk away. And that's not love, that's trade.
And equally, we sometimes forget when we're in a relationship to love ourselves unconditionally as well. And that's really important.
Oh yeah, we've got to love ourselves too, Annie, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Love should be about what we give, not what we get back, not what we're expecting to get back. And yes, that includes what we give to ourselves. Yeah, it's important not to be disrespected by people. But just because they can't love us back doesn't mean we shouldn't love them. I love everybody, even any day.
You are going to get such a slap. Or is that what you're up to? I see what you're doing, Jack Cox.
Sure, there have been special individuals in my life, individuals who I've loved especially deeply. And there's one in my life at the moment. But I love everybody, including those who have taught me my hardest lessons, as we've said before in this show. Looking back on it all, I can see the funny side of it now. And I can see what I've learned from it all. And I can see how I've grown. And I'm proud of how I've grown.
Yeah.
I've taken all the blows. And it hasn't turned me nasty. And I'm very, very proud of that. Although it may have turned me into a bit of a loner. Which brings me neatly back to Samhain. Which is how we started, which is what this show is meant to be about. This time of reflection and introspection, of taking stock and integrating all the learnings, ready to begin again at Beltane, stronger and wiser and more loving than ever.
Yay! Are you ready now? All we need is love.
Da, 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 da.
Da. All you need is love. Andrew, you'd have missed out, wouldn't you, if we hadn't have sung your favourite.
So,
I'm going to advertise the book, even if it's not ready yet.
Oh,
Annie,
it's going to be ready soon, isn't it, Andrew? I feel sure.
I've got to contact, I've got this lovely friend who's from Iran, and she lives in Malta, but she's an artist and she paints the most beautiful paintings, and she's gone through a lot of cultural problems. They're going through them still in Iran right now.
Yeah.
And it's part of her, and her response to that is to paint beautiful pictures.
Oh, how beautiful, Andrew.
It's to balance the energy. That's why she's doing it. She's doing the paintings so that she can put some good vibes out into the world. It's her response. So she's already...
Is that going to be your book cover?
Yes, she's already given me permission to use any of my paintings, Andrew. But what she wants is the dimensions. You know how tall your book is, your books are, Annie. Yes. That's going to be the shape of it.
The format,
yeah. So what she's wanting is those dimensions. And then she said, I will send you the highest resolution of the painting that you've chosen. Perfect. In that dimension, yes. So it's going to be the most beautiful book cover you ever did see. I think so, anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
And even if you don't like the contents, it'll be worth buying just for the cover.
For a piece of artwork.
When it's all ready, Andrew, I want you on this show to talk, well, on my Friday show to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely, Andrew.
So, Annie Day.
Yes.
Introduce us to this lovely young lady who's just materialized by your side.
Okay, so you've met Iona previously. She's my mermaid friend. So we're going to do a swap of treatments.
Hi, Jack. You okay?
Hello. Yeah.
But you've seen it before when we were talking about the fae.
Yeah.
You were able to come.
Oh,
to
yes, I remember now.
Yeah, just at the end, I snuck in again.
Yeah.
I'm good at making an appearance.
Mermaid, you can never have too many mermaids, so you've got two mermaids again tonight, or merfairies.
no answer to
that. No appropriate.
There probably is.
Right, well, we've gone well over time again, I'm afraid. We've gone to an hour and a half.
Well, do you know what? I think that we're worth listening to, Jack Cox.
Well, I think we are too. But, well, yeah, I think we are too. I do remember when these shows were just an hour. It seems like a distant memory.
You have to be very careful about who you ask to be your co-host. I remember you saying to me, do you think you can talk for an hour? And I was like, Jack, getting me started to talk for an hour is not a problem. Shutting me up after an hour might be more problematic, which clearly I've beautifully showcased over the last few months.
it's all good. It's all good.
It is all
Well,
good.
Right. Have you got any announcement, Annie? Before we, or anybody got any announcements before we close?
No, I think that's it.
Right. Well, thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank
Please
you, everybody.
Please do like, subscribe, and share this on YouTube. And we'll see you all again next week.
Okay, thank you, everybody who's watched it live. And thank you to all the people who are going to watch it on YouTube. And thank you, Jack Cox, for giving me this great opportunity.
And thank you, Andrew and Kenneth, very much for coming along.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
And Iona.
Yep. And we'll see you all again next week, hopefully.
Okay, bye, Jack.
Namaste.
Namaste. Leave.